Hello everyone, my name is Solange, and today I'm sitting with you in the Rider Lab at Horsehaven Stables. With me I have Mr. Frankie Lovato, the creator and the inventor of the Equicizer.
Hello Solange, thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming, we really appreciate it.
Yes, and we're both Ohioans.
We are, yep.
I'm not too far from here where I build my Equicizers and where Woody was made.
Yeah.
And so it's nice that we're kind of, I won't say we're neighbors, but we're pretty close.
Well, and the horse world is so big that when somebody's like within driving distance, it's always like a little treat that you get to meet somebody in person.
Yeah.
I know you ship all over the world.
Yes. Yeah, so I mean, in that sense, you are one of my closest customers.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Where are some of the really cool places you've got to ship your Equicizers to?
Well, just recently, we shipped some to China. We shipped to Australia, Japan. We have several in Japan. I have some representatives there. They kind of go like hotcakes over there.
Now, is this for the racehorse industry?
It's a mixed bag. Japan is very popular with horse racing.
Yes,
and
I knew that.
They don't have a lot of room there, but they use these in all their training centers.
That makes sense.
But Australia, very popular in racing, but also their therapeutic riding programs, what they call their RDA programs, and all parts of Europe. We've reached over 30 countries. So.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Did you have any idea when you started that it would turn into this?
I had a sense that I thought I was onto something.
Yeah. You were filling a need.
This was, we talked a little bit before this interview about, the miles that we've put in how overnight successes. And
Yes.
I've been building horses for over 30 years.
Yeah.
And what seemed to be when the first initial orders started to come in, it was very exciting, and I thought, man, I'm going to be an overnight sensation. I've created something here.
Yeah.
And it's been a lot of blood, sweat, and tears in many years, and
I believe it.
And still a lot of hard work.
I believe it.
Yeah.
Well, we've had Woody, our guy here, for just over a year.
Yeah.
He just had his one-year anniversary.
His anniversary.
It went so fast. Woody has been instrumental in my curriculum, teaching a wide variety of students. And even though it's been a year, and I feel like I found so many amazing uses for him in curriculum building for the individual riders, I still feel like I've really scratched the surface.
Yeah.
Like there's so many more applications that he's going to have. He's been fabulous for riders who were off with an injury, horse related or not.
Yeah.
Riders who are away from riding for an illness, or sometimes life gets in the way, you know, and you just can't. And then you want to return to riding, but you're not sure how you're going to feel.
Right.
It's been a really nice place for people to start, like an in-between step to get back into the saddle. Riders who are nervous, he's a great confidence builder. We have beginner riders who've never ridden before, so we're able to integrate him sort of early in their education, so they can find all those like hyper-specific body motions you need to ride without the complexity of driving the horse, which is hard in the beginning.
Very hard.
When you're learning to ride. We have advanced riders who come from all over who maybe have had a lot of competing narratives, many different horses, many different trainers, many different disciplines. And they hear so many different things because, every horse person's different.
Yeah.
They've all got different opinions.
Different ideas and different opinions.
And it helps them sort of come in and explore maybe little gaps in their educations or places where they've had confusion. And it really lets them clarify. And because they can have the mirrors, they can see themselves.
Yeah.
So now they go, oh, people have told me this for years, but I didn't realize that's what I was doing.
Exactly.
Because they couldn't see themselves. And even if they're in an arena with a mirror, they're busy, they're cantering, right?
Right. And they're thinking about their horse.
Yeah, you only have so much brain juice.
Yes.
So to be able to dedicate it just to your own body can be very freeing and insightful for riders.
Yes.
And we have riders who fly in and train here to go for the world's longest horse race.
Is that the Mongolian Derby?
The Mongolian Derby, yeah. It's 600 kilometers over 10 days out in Mongolia. And they have so much to deal with the horses because they're semi-feral herder ponies, So they have sometimes a little bit more spunk than the average show horse that people in this area are accustomed to riding. And then also there's the navigation and the weather and the packing. Yeah. So for them to feel really comfortable and allow their riding to be sort of automatic, it lets them get out their GPS and decide if they're going to go over a mountain or around a mountain, if they're heading in the right direction, and what they should do with the storm. So he's been just an incredible tool.
I'm so happy to hear that.
We just love him so much. He's been just fabulous. Do you want to tell us a little bit about how you invented him?
Yeah, and a lot of the things that you pointed out, I was a professional jockey, and I sustained a bad leg injury, and there was a question if I was ever going to be able to race again.
Yeah.
And I lost all mobility in my left leg. And when I was going through rehab, there was nothing to simulate riding a horse, and that's what I needed.
Yeah.
I will backtrack a little bit. When I was a little kid and I didn't have access to horses, I used to try to saddle the couch, anything that would try to a saddle would try to.
I had a little kid once who used to sit on top of her doghouse.
You know, it's got that
yep.
peak, and you start thinking creative, and there was where I grew up, there was a lot of new homes being built, and I would go in the stacks of wood that was just thrown away, and I would take it home and I would build things.
That's incredible.
So that's kind of how it initially started, but when it took it to the next level, was when I had broken my leg and needed that rehab, and there was nothing that was going to simulate.
Well, and there needs to be something between injury and galloping a racehorse.
Exactly.
That's too big of a gap to make.
That's a long bridge.
Yes.
And there's nothing to put those two together. And so created something. It was very, very raw. It was it wasn't as extravagant as Woody.
As polished.
Here. Yeah. But it worked so well for me. And just the thing that the emphasis of the idea when my doctor finally, when I was my final x-rays, and he said, okay, he was able to sign off and let me start getting back on horses again.
Yeah.
That I'd already been riding my wooden horse for about 3 or 4 months.
Yes.
And my fitness level was up, my balance was up,
yes.
my confidence was up,
you could trust your body to obey you.
And I knew what I was in for, so there was nothing. I went to the barn the next morning with confidence.
Yes.
And I was getting on race horses that were,
Yeah. I do.
They're not little sweet ponies.
No.
They're yanking me around and pulling me around, and actually I did more in one morning of riding that no rider should have been able to do, and it was because I was able to work out on my
appropriate rehab,
my wooden horse. But I was still on crutches when I was able to start my rehab, starting to work out on the wooden contraption that I had back then.
Yeah.
That became the Equicizer.
I wish I would have had him when I had my daughter, because she's 11, and I had a C-section. And I brought myself back to riding in a way that I felt was like logical. But I remember the first couple times getting out of my body going,
No.
And I was on my beginner school horse that taught all the little kids in a nice big Western saddle. Like, I gave myself all the help possible. And if I had had him, I think I could have rehabbed from my pregnancy.
Yeah, absolutely right. You could have built your core up and and stayed in
And that tends to be because a lot of, in our area anyway, amateur riders and amateur first-time horse owners tend to be women. And oftentimes the pregnancy is the hardest thing.
Yeah,
they choose not to ride during it, or maybe they ride for a portion of it, depending on that personal choice. But then there's always a period of time where you're off.
Yeah.
And then you have to get back on, and your body's like, maybe not.
Right.
So I think that he would have a wonderful application for women who rode and then had a pregnancy and then wanted to come back. And get their confidence up.
There's so many little things, like you said. There's nothing between. Well, now there is because of like Woody, but going from the ground to have to bridge that connection to a real horse. It's that bridge that helps prepare you in every sense, right? So it's fitness and
mental,
confidence,
emotional,
and, all that stuff.
And a yoga ball is just not the same. And I have women who come in and they're like, "Well, I do Pilates," and I want to go on the ground.
Yeah.
Now you have to do all that, but on a horse that's moving.
Yes.
And some of it's just with any sport, there's a hyper-specific motion that your body has to learn. And I feel like this was known for ages in other sports, right? Baseball players have batting cages.
Yeah.
Golfers have driving ranges. All the high-level performance athletes have hyper-specific gyms and places where they do physical therapy and certain exercises to get in shape. And it just hadn't filtered into horses quite yet.
Right. So that's that is something that I tapped into.
Yeah.
And even though all these years I've been doing it, the concept is still, it's not always easy for people to absorb. I still get a lot of criticism. Well, why don't you just get on a real horse? And it just, it's so frustrating that, well, it wasn't for me when I was still on crutches,
Yes.
and it wouldn't have been for you when you just had a child
Right,
and
yes.
C-section, and so many people are coming off an injury,
Yeah.
or I mean, just not every horse is going to be dead broke.
Well, and not everyone has access to a horse on a regular basis to build their fitness.
Yeah.
Sometimes they live in not agrarian areas like we do. Sometimes they're not horse owners,
Yeah.
right? Or they are, but they have a work schedule that only lets them get out to the barn once a week, and they realize that the lack of access is maybe holding them back from their goals.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Much like with baseball and golf, you have to be outside, have a special place with a bunch of other people.
Yeah.
And guys knew that they weren't going to get good if that was the only time they did it, so they built special places to practice.
Right.
You know?
So that, yeah, you nailed it. That's the concept of the simplicity of just being able to exercise and just time in the saddle.
Yeah.
And I call it pajama riding. So
Yeah.
you can be in your pajamas, you can be watching television.
Yeah.
Instead of just sitting on the couch or a lounge chair,
Yeah.
You could actually be riding and using your core and using your hips and
It's
your
such
spine.
a beautifully elegant design, and then it doesn't have to be plugged in.
Right.
You know?
I love that. That's been my, like, I want to keep it simple.
Yes.
Keep it organic. Keep it
Yes.
very, very, just very simple for people to be able to evaluate themselves. It mirrors, it mimics you as the rider.
Yes.
Your movement, your motion, your energy.
Yes.
Just keep it simple. And that's been my thing, why I didn't want to go any further.
It's
I like
the
what it
beauty
does.
of it. The beauty is in the simplicity of how well it works.
Thank you. So may I ask you,
Yeah.
for my people out there
Yes.
that have been following the Equicizer and what it may do for them, you've created this lab,
Yes.
and I'm starting from zero. There's people out there that I would love to share this video with
Yeah.
and explain what you're doing with these tools, and Woody being one of them, but you have various things here.
I do. So I've been a riding instructor for over 20 years, and I rode a lot of disciplines and showed when I was younger, and then when I became a professional, I decided that I wasn't necessarily going to compete with my kids, and I ended up taking them mostly trail riding and fox hunting. And that was an interesting start for me because we were able to be very non-breed specific. So in my facility, we have ponies and draft crosses and quarter horses and thoroughbred crosses and Arabs and saddle horses. Because as long as the horse hunts appropriately, it's a good hunt horse. So I could get horses that maybe didn't have the best conformation or didn't have the best breeding, or maybe they were older and they were like, I really don't canter on my left lead in the indoor. And I go, that's okay. Will you be good for a kid out hunting? And you go, yeah. And I'm like, you've got the best job ever then. So it let me sort of give jobs to a lot of horses that maybe wouldn't have made the cut in the show ring, just because of if they had good training and good behavior, they could hunt. So it allowed me to have access to a lot of different motions, a lot of different breeds, and a lot of different riders who were looking for something maybe outside the show ring. And we could focus more on what I call real world riding as opposed to performative riding. Because while the show position is a skill, it doesn't always apply to you're cantering through mud, or now there's a big hill, or I'm out here and now maybe there's going to be a thunderstorm, right? So that real world riding allowed me to be based less on how riders are being judged by style in the show ring that season, and more what keeps you safe on your horse. What keeps your horse safe, what keeps you safe, and that let me rely on physics and science and body position and proof. So this sort of science-based, physics-based, really logic-driven riding position drew a lot of riders to me who were looking for a higher level of education other than pick your chin up and put your shoulders back.
Yeah.
Don't have quiet hands, right? They wanted to know the nuts and bolts.
Yeah.
So the lab became an idea about 2 years ago, and it was really the intensives that we do with the Derby riders who sort of were the germ of the idea. I went, if these riders are going to keep flying to me and driving to me and coming to me to train for 2 or 3 days to prepare for a very difficult horse event, I want to be able to give them the best education possible.
And this is the Mongolian Derby, which is probably the most excruciating test of any rider.
Yes, 10 days through Mongolia, 600 kilometers. It's a big deal.
Yeah.
It's the world's longest horse race.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a student who had an Equicizer. She'd had it for several years. It was in her living room. She lives about 30 minutes from here. So I went, I bet I need one of those. And the first thing I do is I texted her and I said, can I come to your house and ride your horse? And she went, of course. So I drove to her house, met her really cute little dog, sat on her Equicizer in her living room, and in 5 minutes went, yep, I need one of these. This is gonna be it. And I think I contacted you the very next day and ordered.
Uh-huh.
And then the tools started arriving. We have a home horse and a mighty bucky and mirrors and all kinds of things. We have bands and weights and exercise mats. We do groundwork too with our intensives and our students in our clinic. And I thought, well, let's just do a couple of my own students in the barn. I picked 4 ladies who I thought would be a good match. And I brought them over to the lab and I taught them with my co-instructor, Kane. And he would do groundwork with them and here on the tools, and then I would take them and put them on a horse. And I thought it'd just be interesting to see like a little control group. Well, those first 4 women kept going, and then all the other women in the barn kept asking. And then I started to see new things that we needed in riders, and Kane went, we'd really be great if we had one of these, and it's all been student driven. The needs of the riders have created the lab.
Yes, I love that.
And it works because the riders created it.
Yeah.
With their needs.
Yeah.
And one has a question or has an issue or has a problem or an injury, and then we start another one, and it just sort of has built and built. And then I started putting stuff on Facebook to just show people, because it's hard to explain.
Yes.
Right?
It is. It's very hard.
I always say if I train barrel racers, I'd go, well, I train barrel racers. And that's all I'd have to say.
Yeah.
And everybody would know. But I say, I have a rider lab with all these tools. And they look at me like, you what now? So the videos seem to be more impactful because you can see people really doing it.
Right.
And then it makes sense, right? It's
Yeah.
almost as good as getting on them yourself.
Yes.
Right? It's like as close as you can get to experiencing it. And it's become wildly popular because so many riders, I think, were looking for something like this, for this kind of instruction and this kind of access. And it's just been wonderful. We've
It's
had
fantastic.
great success with our riders.
And you're getting riders coming in from not just Ohio, you're getting riders coming in from all parts of the country.
Yes, Washington, South Carolina, riders contact me through like my website or through social media, and they ask about, you know, coming in and doing a 2-day or a 3-day intensive, which is usually about 6 hours a day.
Uh-huh.
And it's half horses and half in here in the lab, and it involves myself and my co-instructor, Kane. And I usually talk to them for about an hour on the phone. They tell me what they're looking for. I send them some photos and videos, and almost always they're like, I want to commit.
And you could do Zoom as well.
Yes,
right?
I have done
So-
Zoom. In fact, from one of your posts on Facebook, I met a lovely lady who lives, I believe, in Indiana, and I've been Zooming with her once a week for several months on her Equicizer. So I sit on my Equicizer, and she sits on her Equicizer in her kitchen. So we were able to go all winter, even when the weather was cold, right?
It's beautiful, yeah.
And that format has been really very helpful. I was surprised. It was the first time I really ever started teaching on Zoom, and I wasn't quite sure because I'd never done it before.
Uh-huh.
And it's worked out really great. And in fact, she's just booked her own intensive, so she's going to come in.
She's going to come in person.
She's going to come in person in May.
I picture the lab for a horse rider, like almost
Yes.
like a car wash. And
Yes.
and you start in one end, and by the time you
Yes.
get out the other end,
Yes.
you'll have accomplished so many different things.
Correct.
Like, what would you say is someone that walks in the door,
Yes.
once they leave, what's going to change? What's going to be, what is the lab going to do for them?
They're going to feel more secure on their horse.
Bottom line.
Bottom line.
Bottom line.
Regardless of the discipline they're riding, the type of breed they're riding, their goals, they're going to leave the lab going, I feel more stable in the saddle.
And confident.
More confident, more secure. And when we're better in our own bodies, when our position is correct and we're no longer concerned about if we're going to stay on, how we're going to stay on, how we're riding, it frees up our brain to communicate to our horses. So now in the moments when the horse is in chaos and flux, it spooks or it bolts or something upsets it and it bucks or it rears, right? It has a big feeling. That's what we used to call it when my kid was little. A big feeling. When that horse has a big feeling, you need to be able to communicate with it. But if you're just clinging on, trying to not fall off during that big feeling, you've abandoned the horse in the one part of the ride where it really needs structure and help and communication. So to be able to stay on your horse and in your saddle and in your stirrups and communicate to your horse while it's having a big feeling really helps the horse. So I've started saying that the lab might not involve your horse, but it'll help your horse because it helps you.
Yes. It has to work together.
It does.
Otherwise,
nobody's
doesn't
happy.
work.
Ain't nobody's happy.
Nobody wins. Well, yeah, I totally get it. I could see someone who's coming in and leaving just better.
Yes.
And all around better. And all these little tools that you use, including, I'm grateful that Woody's a part of this,
Yes.
be part of this
Me
operation, that they can see their weaknesses and they can see where they need to improve, and you have the tools here to just make it happen.
And sometimes also the space and the time and the quiet and non-judgmental support. Because oftentimes when you're working through something with your horse, you're in the arena, there's other horses, there's people watching.
Yeah.
This is sort of more of an enclosed, intimate, private space.
Yeah.
And we work with our riders one-on-one, so they can talk about what's happening and experiment sort of in private a little bit.
Yeah. I think that really makes a huge difference.
It does.
Yeah, so I totally get that.
Horse girls can be judgy.
People.
I guess everybody can, right? But yeah. So I find that it gives them time to do something, because the intensives are many hours over a large, several days.
Mm-hmm.
So oftentimes they'll ask me a question and I'll sit with them for like 35 minutes and just answer questions. I find myself answering a lot of questions. Because in a traditional student or rider, horse trainer, horse instructor relationship, you don't have that kind of time.
Right.
Maybe it's a group lesson, maybe it's a private, but it's only 45 minutes and you're on the horse and the instructor wants you to do these things, and then you got to get off your horse because the next person comes in. So some of my riders have talked about how nice it is to just have their questions really succinctly answered in a way that pertains to them and their horse. Because maybe they heard something that's true, but it doesn't really apply to them because of XYZ reasons.
Yeah, and there's 1,000 reasons.
Oh, yes. 1,000.
Too many variables.
Oh, yes, exactly.
Right.
Well, thank you so much, Frankie. I don't want to take up any more of your time.
No, I was so glad we're able to get together like this, and we should do it again. We
should
do a follow-up.
We totally should, because we're like horse neighbors.
Yes, we are. in this little world we live in. Thank you for having me. Thank you for all you do with Woody.
Yeah, he's great.
And I'm looking forward to sharing this with our customers and the interest that we have out there, which is very, very vast, right?
Oh, yes.
And then of course, just being a part of this, I'm very grateful and proud.
Thank you. You should be.
Thank you.
I always say the lab's one of the things that I'm the most proud of too, because we created something.
Yes.
And it worked.
It works.
And that's awesome.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Frankie.
Thank you. Thanks, Solange.